Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. We're going to be looking at this story about former Illinois Governor Jim Edgar's recent pancreatic cancer diagnosis.
Mm.
And it's obviously very serious news, but it's also, I think, a really good opportunity to kind of look at a couple of interesting threads here.
Hmm.
One is, obviously the political legacy of Jim Edgar, like who is this guy? What did he do? Where does he fit in Illinois history? And then the second is, we're also kind of confronted with this like really a tough reality on this disease.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to give you both of those in this episode of the Deep Dive.
It's interesting. It's kind of like this merging of the personal and the political, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you think about not just his impact on Illinois, but also, like, what does this mean for him at this point in his life?
Right, yeah, it's not just policy anymore.
Exactly.
So I think for people who aren't super familiar with Illinois politics, let's start with some background on Jim Edgar, right?
Sure.
So he was governor from 1990 to 1998, but his career in politics, like way, way before that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And he's got deep roots in Illinois. I mean, he was born in Oklahoma, but raised in Charleston, Illinois.
Hmm.
And, that connection to the state, you see it throughout his whole career.
Yeah.
And he got into politics really early. He actually started as a legislative intern, like he was interested in government from the get-go.
Wow, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
even when he lost his first election, I guess that was for Illinois House in 74, he came right back and won just 2 years later.
Yeah, he was elected to the House in 76, so definitely determined.
He doesn't give up.
No, not at all. And that drive, you see it over and over. After the House, he was appointed Secretary of State, and then he won 2 full terms in that role. And, he really made a name for himself nationally, cracking down on drunk driving.
Interesting. So those early experiences, you can kind of see how they shaped him, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then in 1990, Governor Thompson decided not to run for a 5th term. So Edgar, he went for it. He won the governorship, beat Neil Hartigan.
Okay.
And his first term, kind of interesting. He was all about shrinking the government. But at the same time, he was also pushing for social programs like prenatal care and early childhood education.
So he's kind of like doing both at the same time.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act. Fiscal conservative, but also socially minded. Kind of reminds you of some of the more moderate Republicans today, maybe.
Yeah, I see that. Definitely not your typical, cookie-cutter Republican.
Right, exactly.
And then, right in the middle of his first term, he has to have quadruple bypass surgery.
Wow, yeah. Talk about a wake-up call.
I mean, both personally and politically, right? What a moment.
For sure, but you know what? He recovers, and he wins re-election in 94, beats Don Clark Netsch pretty handily. Second term, good economy, state surplus growing, still popular. But then he decides not to run for a 3rd term.
Huh. So why not? Why do you think he stopped there?
Who knows, right? Maybe personal reasons, maybe political, hard to say. But it did open the door for George Ryan to become governor after him.
Okay.
But even after leaving office, Edgar didn't just fade away. He stayed involved in Illinois politics and in business, too. And in the last few years, well, he's been pretty outspoken, especially about Donald Trump. He even called him the biggest disaster we've ever had in American government.
Wow, strong words.
Definitely. And the interesting thing is he was really critical of Trump's character, his policies, but he also kind of acknowledged, Trump's political skills. He even predicted that Trump had a good shot at winning a 2nd term. And he was right.
So we saw something in Trump that maybe others didn't.
Yeah, I think so. It's like he could see both the good and the bad. It just shows how complex these political figures can be.
Yeah, you can't just put them in a box, right?
Exactly. But now, after all that, all those years in the spotlight, Edgar's facing this really tough opponent, pancreatic cancer. And that's kind of where we get to the second part of our deep dive, the disease itself.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really personal, really medical. I mean, pancreatic cancer, it's known for being aggressive. And unfortunately, it often doesn't show symptoms until it's already pretty advanced. And that's a big reason why it's so hard to treat, because it's often caught late. And, given Edgar's age and the fact that it spread, it's likely it was growing for a while without him even knowing.
So scary. It's like it just sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it can be really insidious, especially in older patients.
Yeah, and it's like one of the things in his statement, he mentions that it was doctors at Rush University Medical Center here in Chicago. That's where the diagnosis was made. And they're coordinating with physicians at the Mayo Clinic on a treatment plan. So he's getting, expertise from 2 top-tier institutions.
Right.
So what does that tell us, I guess, about how complicated this type of cancer is to treat?
Well, I think it shows you need a whole team of specialists.
Yeah.
Both Rush and Mayo Clinic, they're known for cancer care. They've got these great oncologists, surgeons, all kinds of experts, and they're always doing research trying to find new treatments. So the fact that they're working together on Edgar's case, it probably means they need like very specific knowledge,
Yeah.
maybe even access to some of those cutting-edge clinical trials.
So it's not even just finding a good doctor, it's like finding a whole network.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so what about the treatment itself? I mean, Edgar said that the cancer has spread. If surgery isn't really an option at this point, what are the other options? What do they usually do?
Well, usually when pancreatic cancer has spread like that, chemotherapy is a big part of the treatment.
Hmm.
It's designed to like attack those cancer cells that have gone beyond the pancreas. And sometimes they use radiation therapy too to try to shrink the tumors and maybe help with the pain. And there's some newer treatments too. They're called targeted therapies.
Okay.
They're kind of cool. They focus on specific things in the cancer cells, try to exploit their weaknesses, but a lot of times they use those along with the chemo, kind of a combination approach.
So it sounds like there's always like new stuff coming out, which is good, but it also makes it hard to know what's going to be best, right?
Yeah, it's always changing, that's for sure.
Edgar used this phrase in his statement. He said, "We do not underestimate this challenge." Is that like, is he putting on the brave face? I mean, is he maybe downplaying how serious this is?
I mean, it's possible, right? He's trying to be strong, optimistic for himself, for his supporters. But you got to remember, this is a guy who's been through a lot, I mean, he's had those political setbacks and the health issues, bypass surgery and all that, and he always bounces back.
Yeah.
He's resilient. So maybe that's just like part of his personality.
Interesting. So we have this mix of the personal and the political all over again, right? I mean, this is someone who's been a major figure in Illinois politics for decades. Even after leaving office, he's still involved, still speaking out. And now he's facing this really, really tough thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think, how's this news going to be received in Illinois politics? Especially with all the things he said about Trump and all that.
I think this might be something that brings people together across the political aisle.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Edgar, he's got this reputation for integrity, for public service. And this diagnosis, it humanizes him, right? It reminds us that even these powerful people, they're still vulnerable. I think we're going to see a lot of support for him from Democrats, Republicans, everyone.
So it's kind of a reminder that there's a human being behind the politician.
Yeah, exactly.
And, he chose to be in the public eye, but there's still that private side, the personal side. And now he's got to deal with this incredibly difficult thing.
Right.
And his wife, Brenda, I mean, they're facing this together. It's not just him going through it, it's the whole family.
Of course. Yeah, it affects everyone around them.
And they spend part of the year in Arizona, right? That's where he's getting treatment now. It makes you wonder, is it helpful to be in a familiar place, a comfortable place, when you're going through something like this?
Oh, I bet it is. Having your loved ones around you, feeling like things are somewhat normal, that's got to be important when you're dealing with a serious illness.
Yeah.
And he said he's going to come back to Springfield to continue treatment when he's able. So it seems like he's trying to balance, getting the best care, but also staying connected to his home, his routine.
So it's not just about the physical stuff, it's the emotional and mental stuff, too.
Right, exactly. It's all connected.
It's interesting, so much of what we've talked about today, it's not just about Edgar, it's about bigger things, his whole story, his politics, and now this. It all kind of touches on these bigger issues that affect all of us.
Yeah, I think that's right. This isn't just Illinois politics. It's about health and resilience and how fragile life can be. And it makes you think, what are my priorities? What are my relationships like? It makes you think about your own life, your own mortality.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. But it's also a reminder that early detection is so important and that we need to keep supporting research and helping people who are going through these tough diagnoses.
Yeah, no, I agree. It really does make you think. It's kind of like, we see these political figures and we think they're, I don't know, invincible or something.
Yeah.
But then something like this happens and it's like, oh, wait, they're human too.
Exactly. They're just people dealing with the same stuff we all deal with.
And, Edgar has always been the pragmatic guy, right? Very measured, always thinking things through.
Right.
So I wonder, is that how he's approaching this now, this whole health thing? I mean,
I would say so, yeah. I mean, his whole career, he's been the guy who, assesses the situation, figures out the options, makes the tough calls.
right.
So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's using that same, analytical approach now, focusing on what he can control, the medical care, being with his family, staying hopeful.
And even in his statement, the way he announced it was very, I don't know, carefully worded. He's not pretending it's not serious, but he's also not, giving up.
Yeah, there's a real strength in that, I think. He's acknowledging the reality, but he's not letting it define him.
It's kind of like even when things are really tough, you can still choose how you face them, you know?
Absolutely. There's always room for hope, for gratitude.
And I think that's something we can all relate to, no matter what our politics are or, what's going on in our lives.
It's that human spirit, that ability to find strength even when things are really dark.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think there are a few things to really take away from this. We looked at Jim Edgar's whole career from those early days in politics to being governor to, everything he's done since then. And we also talked about, pancreatic cancer, how tough it is, but also the hope that's out there.
Yeah, it's been a really thought-provoking conversation. And, it's a reminder that these big figures, these politicians, they go through these life-changing things, just like everyone else. But even with all the uncertainty, there's that resilience, that courage to keep going.
And Edgar's story, it's really about more than just him. It's about how we all deal with the good and the bad in life. It's about cherishing the moments we have, being grateful for the people in our lives.
And finding that strength to face the tough stuff.
Exactly. And, it also makes you think about the bigger picture, right? We need to support research, push for early detection, and just be there for people who are facing these really hard diagnoses.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another one.